Hi, welcome to Papa's at Home. We're really excited to have you here today because today we are cooking the infamous Linguine Bosciola at Papa's. Now, if you've had this before, it's a bacon, cream and shallot based pasta and it is sensational. And we may even have a few little tips and tricks to make it even better at home possibly, if you're lucky. Now, the starting point is, of course, we're going to need our ingredients. So today we've actually pre-cooked our pasta because it makes it easier and faster for you guys at home. But the first thing you will do is take a pot of water, get your pasta there, put the water to boil, a pinch of salt in there. You can actually put a reasonable amount of salt in this thing, as Jamie Oliver actually says in some of his videos, because the salt actually gets drained away with the water. The reason why I put a bit of salt on it is it actually seasons the pasta slightly and gives it a bit of a good oomph. When you take the pasta out and strain it, once it's dry, you want to put a tiny, tiny splash of olive oil in it and massage it into the pasta. The reason why we do this is that way, when it's being stored, it's still quite loose. So this has been sitting down for a little while now, yet it feels like it's fresh, other than being cold, but that's fine. So the first few ingredients we're looking at today are, of course, our bacon, our lovely fresh onion, some lovely fresh shallots. Shallots give it a nice little oniony essence, and even though we mix the two together, they actually balance each other quite nicely. Most importantly, of course, a bit of garlic. Now, when using your garlic, you can choose how much garlic you like to use based on how many people you're cooking for, as well as how much garlic you actually like. Now, personally, I'm quite a fan of garlic, so I use a relatively larger amount compared to the average recipe. So today I'm cooking for 4 people, so I'm actually going to be using 2 whole cloves. I've got an 1/8 of an onion here, 4 rashers of bacon, and of course, we'll be using 2 shallots. And finally and foremost, our mushrooms. Now, the mushrooms are my favorite part because it gives a little bit of nutritional element to it. Now, if you're at home and you like to make slightly healthy meals, we are talking about bacon and cream here. You can throw a few little extras in there. So anything along the lines of snow peas, avocado, sometimes even beans, or even some cherry tomatoes. I have used once or twice before a bit of capsicum in there as well to give it a little bit more body and a little bit more nutrition to it. So first and foremost, we're going to get started by dicing our onion. Now, dicing an onion, it's pretty standard. If you guys are criers, well, that's too bad. That's the fun of it. I'm not going to lie, I am too, but I peeled the onion before so you wouldn't see me cry. So once you've diced your onion up, get it nice and loose and roughed up there and pop it on the side. The second element you want is your garlic and your shallots. Now, personally, I love to slice garlic and dice it with a knife. Other people prefer to crush it, or you can even take a shortcut and pick up just a jar of minced garlic from the either from your fresh food grocer or even from Woolworths. Personally, I prefer the fresh food. So once we've peeled all our garlic, we're going to munch that up. It's always good to have all of your ingredients prepared at the beginning of the recipe because this is actually a really quick recipe to cook. So once the pan starts, things happen very quickly. Now, below here, you'll see there's a link. If you subscribe to our website, you'll be able to get access to the written recipes of all our ingredients and recipes on here, as well as a list of the ingredients with the proportions for how many people. So within that, when you request a recipe, we'll send through not only the recipe written, but also the list of ingredients with exactly how many per person in a spreadsheet telling you if you're cooking from anything from 1 person through to 10 people. Now, the benefit to that is this is such a simple recipe that you can, of course, cook it for as many as you like. My record so far is cooking it for 25 people for a dinner party. And everyone thought I was spectacular, but secretly it was one of the easiest recipes on there. Now, when you eat Bosciola in a restaurant, usually they would have only left it on the heat for around 4 to 5 minutes because of the pressure of having lots of customers. One of the tips and tricks I like to do when making a Bosciola at home is because no one else is waiting for their food, you can actually leave it on the stove to simmer a little bit, which allows the cream to thicken and brown slightly, which gives it a thorough, richer flavor. All right, and of course our shallots. Now when doing shallots, remember, take the ends off. Make sure you peel off that first little layer bit. And these top green bits, not too much of those. So I usually just leave them like this and start at the end until I've decided I've got enough there. Chopping them nice and finely. Now, That's our first batch right there, which goes in the hot pan. Onion, garlic, and shallots. Once that's gone to slightly brown, or starting to slightly brown, then we would add our bacon. Now today I've actually got round bacon as opposed to full rashers. So I'm actually going to slice it down the middle there, just so I can get some nice thin strip bits. Now you'll notice I'm actually using two sides of the board. On one side I've got the fresh bacon, on the other one I've got the fresh veg. So now that I've used the bacon on here, I'm actually going to have to get a fresh board to finish off the final ingredients, as well as a clean knife. So lucky for you guys, I already have one here. Now when cooking, obviously we like to put a little bit of our oil in the pan to start with to prevent things from sticking. Personal preference of mine is actually to use butter. Number one, because I reckon it tastes better. As they say, the three secret ingredients of French cooking: butter, butter, and more butter. And also because olive oil was never fully technically designed to be used for cooking. It was actually meant to be eaten raw. So when you heat olive oil, it actually has a slight chemical change in it. Whilst this is fine, as a personal preference, I'd rather use butter or coconut oil. Alright, now we're going to get started on the stove. We have our ingredients. We've got our onion, our garlic, and our shallots all nice and chopped up. We have our bacon and our mushroom. The final ingredient is, of course, our cream, and most importantly, a bit of seasoning, our pepper, and a tiny pinch of fresh shaved Parmesan cheese. Alright guys, here we are on the stove, ready to go. So as I mentioned earlier, personally, I like to just use a little chunk of butter as opposed to oil, because, well, I think it tastes better. So once your butter melts, the first thing you want to put in is your shallots, your onion, and your garlic, as I mentioned. Let that sizzle around. Give it a good little stir and a flick. As that starts to brown, feel free to chuck your bacon straight in. Now, this is the part where you want to turn your pan down slightly so your bacon has time to actually cook. Oh, bacon in there. Now, as this is starting to slightly brown, you're going to have the rest of your ingredients ready to go. So we've got our mushrooms on the side, and of course our cream, and our actual pasta. Now you can actually cook this relatively quickly, as is a fast meal, because once the cream goes in, everything cooks through in detail as it's stewing. It's always nice though to have some nice brown crispy bacon in there to give it a real sort of rich flavour. Once it starts to brown slightly, I like to put a little splash of white wine in there just to give it a little bit of essence and flavour. And allow that just to marinate through. Love the smell of bacon and garlic. With a little hint of onion. Now that it's starting to brown slightly, all we're going to do is simply chuck in our mushrooms here. Now you've got to remember, even though it may seem like a lot of mushrooms to start with, as the mushrooms go in, they shrink with heat. So when you first pop them in, there may be more mushrooms than everything else put together, but as it starts to slowly cook through, you'll notice that the mushrooms settle in quite nicely. Now as you can notice, the mushrooms are starting to brown just that little bit there with the bacon. You can really start to get the essence of the flavour mixing in together there, and as that comes through, that's when it's time for the final ingredient, of course, the cream. This is where you want to start to turn your heat down just that little bit. Because if the cream cooks too quickly, they won't get time to actually settle in. Now one of the best parts about this dish is, if you're cooking this in preparation, you can actually cook up to this point in time and then turn it off and then reheat it. What happens is after you allow this to settle and brown, you can then let it sit for say up to 15-20 minutes while you're organising other food, to then come back to it, add a bit more cream to thicken it and give it a bit more texture to it before putting the pasta in, so there's enough sauce there for it. But as you can start to see here, the cream is already starting to go a nice tinge of brown. Now, little secret home recipe of mine personally, nutmeg. Nutmeg is a lovely little essence to put in the top of it. Only just the slightest sprinkle of it will really bring out the creamy flavour. That looks delicious. Once your cream's gone nice and brown and you decide that it's thick enough, all you simply want to do is pop your pasta in there. Now, it may be beneficial to have some tongs at this point in time if you're not yet talented at flicking pasta in a pan, because the last thing you want to do is get hot cream all over yourself. Now, do be prepared that when making pasta like this at home, you are going to make a little bit of mess. That's the fun part. Parents, if you're allowing your kids to do this, I keep a close eye on where the cream ends up, because you never want to walk into a kitchen afterwards and find the cream all over the ceiling. And there you have it, guys. There we go. Good little slosh bit. One sensational Linguine Bosciola ready to serve. Now, if you are doing this for a date, it is essential that you have the shaved parmesan on the side with a couple of basil leaves, just to give that little bit of elegant touch. But the next stage, of course, is our presentation. Personally, I like bowls because it gives that a really good essence to it. Now remember, of course, we need our Parmesan cheese. Now, if you're clever and you've got a bit of basil sitting on the side from your cooking, you can pick a few of these leaves, just the smaller ones, to prop on top. These little bits in the center in here always give a nice little essence to it. If you don't use tongs for this part, it can get messy as well. And there you have it, guys. One sensational Linguine Bosciola. Now, you can put your parmesan in while you're cooking in it, but do be aware that when the parmesan melts to the pan, it does make it a little bit more interesting to clean. Personally, I love when the pan's still hot to stick it under some water, because it always loosens the ingredients off straight away. And there we are, guys. Homemade Linguine Bosciola, cooked to perfection. Hope you enjoy it.